Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. The topic of our today's presentation is how to write a research proposal. Now, a research proposal is an overall plan, scheme, structure, and strategy that is designed to obtain answers to the research questions or problems that constitute your research project. A research project, it should outline the various tasks you plan to undertake to fulfill your research objectives, test hypotheses if you have any, or obtain answers to your research questions. It should also state your reasons for undertaking the study. Now, before you start your research work, it is very much important to lay down all the plan, all the scheme, all the different procedures that you might be going to adopt. You have to lay down all that plan into a document. And at times this preparation of this document, which is called as the research proposal or research synopsis, is very much important because it is at times mandatory at different research institute to submit such type of document, because it shows your command, your interest in the topic, the efforts that you put in while preparing the topic. It is going to decide the fate of your research work. Like, let's say this is an official document in certain institutes, this research proposal, in which you start up with the university logo, then your name, your supervisor's name, your institute that you are working from, and then you write introduction, the background information, literature review about the research work that you intend to work. Then you move toward the methodology. That's the very important section. You suggest different techniques which might be suitable for you to collect the samples, or it's an observational study. How are you going to observe? And then whether questionnaire or whether interviews, whether epidemiological work. So all these things are going to be written down, followed by the bibliography or references. You prepare, you put up the reference, you show your command over the work, you show that you have read about the work, literature, you have done the literature review, you know the gaps between the knowledge, you know what is good methodology, what is bad methodology for your work. You write it down, all these things, and you prepare an outline over a plan of your research work, that how you are going to conduct it. That is the research proposal. In any academic field, a research proposal will go through a number of committees for approval. For example, in our university, Ahmedabad University of Science and Technology, we have our internal bodies, Board of Studies, Graduate Research Committee, GRCs, and a student has to prepare, after the completion of his coursework, a student has to prepare a research proposal, and the guidelines of which are provided by the institute, and be based upon those guidelines, the student is going to submit his research proposal or research synopsis. I'm talking about the MPhil students. And after that synopsis, the students, they have to defend it as well, along with the supervisor. They have to defend their synopsis in front of a panel of members of Board of Studies and Graduate Research Committees. And once that panel, it feels that, okay, the student has got good command over his work, his plan is good, he knows the gaps between the knowledge of his or her research area. And it's more, they also ask so many different questions related to the work, how the student is going to execute it, where is he going to execute his work, and then what kind of tools is he or she going to use, what kind of biostatistical tools are going to be applied to the data that might be collected, and how good is his or her command over the work. So when all these things they are presented in front of the panel and then they accept it, then your research proposal, then you are allowed to initiate your research work. Before that, you are not allowed to, institutionally not allowed to initiate your research work. Once the bodies get approval, the minutes are circulated, minutes of Board of Studies are circulated, and the GRC is a sub body of Board of Study. At times, some of the synapses they are referred back to the GRC, the Graduate Research Committee. But overall, the Board of Studies minutes, they are important. They are circulated. Your name is written over there, your title and approval, whether it's approved or not. That's important. Once it's approved, you are allowed to carry on your work. And certain requirements for a research proposal, they may vary from university to university and from discipline to discipline within a university. Every university has got its own requirements for the research proposal, and the style of this research proposal or the research synopsis, it might be different from one discipline to another within a university as well. A research proposal, it must address following information: what you are proposing to do, how you plan to find answers to what you are proposing, and why you selected the proposed strategies of investigation. So this is the outlay that you must include this sort of information for your research work. These are the contents of a research proposal. It should include an introduction, including a brief literature review, objectives or research questions of your study, hypothesis to be tested. You have to write it down if hypothesis, if it's applicable, study design that you are proposing to adopt, settings for your study where you are going to conduct the study, the research instrument that you might be using for your work. You need to enlist them. You need to provide a background why you are using that specific research instrument, sampling design and sample size, ethical issues if involved, and how do you propose to deal with them, data processing procedures, proposed time frame for the project, references or bibliography, and finally the appendix. First of all, in a standard research proposal that might be submitted into an institute, you have to follow its protocol, its writing style that is provided by the institute. And the first page might for an MPhil or PhD work, the first page most of the times it just and it's your title, your name, and the monogram of the university and the university names. And the second page actually that includes again your name, your supervisor name, what is you got more than one supervisor, your second supervisor, what is, and his designation, where is he working, whether it's in the same university or in some research, let's say lab or institute, and logo of the university, and then subsequently the introduction starts. The proposal should start with an introduction writing, which the literature review is of central importance, since the literature reviews, as we have already covered in our previous lecture, it serves two main functions. It acquaints you with the available literature in the area of your study, thereby broadening your research knowledge. It provides you with the information on the methods, procedures other people have used, and tells you what works and what does not work. So that's very important. Well, very important. If you don't have got the background information, you don't know what other people's what other people have worked on, what other scientists they worked on, and what has gone into their favor, what has worked for them, what has not worked for them. That's important. You should be knowing all these things, and that's what literature review provides you with. Start with whenever you write the introduction of research proposal, it is better to start with a broad perspective of the main subject area, and you gradually narrowing down the focus to the central problem under investigation. In doing so, let's say you plan to work on, let's say, coronavirus, and you plan to work on the mm, diagnostic procedure for coronavirus, or when I plan to uh, find out new diagnostic intervention in a procedure for coronavirus. And first, you will talk about overall the viral load, the virology, the background, some background that what's this virus, how much mortality is being done by this virus, and then slowly you will move towards your main procedure, that why the diagnostic of this virus is important. So the aspects of a general topic should be an overview of the main area under study, as historical perspective pertinent to the study area. That's very important. You need to present some historical background, when, let's say, coronavirus, when this disease has started, whether what has it's got, why is it linked to the other corona associated viruses, yeah, this, let's say, SARS virus. What's the history of it? What are the major theories, if any, that's mostly applicable to the social sciences? The main issue, problem, and advances in the subject area under study. What was the original issue? How was it solved over the course of time? And how much advancement in the subject area has been done so far? And then the main findings related to the core issue or issues are also provided. The problem Having provided a broad introduction to the area under study, now focus on the issues related to the central theme, identifying some of the gaps in the existing knowledge, body of the knowledge. Knowledge gained from other study and literature about the issues you are proposing to investigate should be an integral part of this. Based upon the literature review, based upon the published material of the previous scientists in notable journals, you extract them, you interpret them, then you prepare your own conceptual framework of work, and then from based upon that you analyze, you figure out what's the gap in the knowledge, and that gap should be addressed by your study, and you plan to propose that. Objectives of the study. Your main objective, it indicates the central thrust of your study, whereas the sub-objectives identify the specified issues you propose to examine. We have covered that in previous lectures, that objective, you need to have objective, one of the main objectives, then you have to have this sub-objectives. And they should be clearly stated and specific in nature. Each sub-objective should delineate only one issue, and it should be numerically placed, and the objective should have these action-oriented verbs such as to determine, to find out, to ascertain, to assess. In formulating sub-objectives, we should be numerically listed. More detailed objectives, if need, can be developed after a study is complete. That's important when you are preparing a your final research project, report, or thesis. Then you review your objectives, because you might have, go beyond the work, you might have extended the work, then you can further elaborate your originally placed objective that you have placed in the research proposal. Now during while writing the research thesis, you can extend them based upon the work, and they are going to be always better than the first originally submitted. Hypothesis to be tested. Hypothesis is a statement of your assumption about the or hunch about the prevalence of a phenomena or relationship between two variables you plan to test within the framework of the study. If you are going to test hypothesis, list them in this hypothesis section. They have a particular style of formation. You must be acquainted with the correct way of wording them. If you study, you may have as many hypotheses in a study you want to test. That you can include as many hypotheses as you want, but bear this thing in your mind that hypothesis is not essential to have. Some of the very good furnished studies, they are completed, the synopsis, they are approved, they are submitted without a hypothesis. It's not essential to have an hypothesis. If you plan to have it, write it down in a proper way. Study design. In this portion, you need to describe what study you plan to use to answer your research questions, whether it's a case study, whether it's a descriptive, whether it's a cross-sectional before and after, experimental, non-experimental, whether it's an observational study, epidemiological study. Describe it so the reader, which are the person, whosoever is reading, analyzing your work, your research synopsis, with that single word, he will like, okay, this is a cross-sectional study. So this is a one-time contact. This is a before and after study. So it's better to describe the study plan, and then you need to identify the strength and weakness of your study plan. Why you have adopted, why you have chose that specific study design for your work, why you have left some other study design. So then you have to include logistical procedures, logistical details of executing the or execution of the study design. And one characteristics of a good study design is that it explains the details with such clarity that if someone else wants to follow the proposed procedure, he or she will be able to do exactly as you have done. This is the important thing about the research, about providing the research design, and then it's different steps that it can be very easily be repeated. The settings briefly describe the organization, hospitals, lab, agency, or community in which you are going to conduct your study. The study setting, study area, you need to, at times, a portion of your study might be conducted at one place, another portion might be conducted at a different place. So you need to enlist, you need to provide the background information about both of these settings. If the study is about a group of people, highlight some of the salient characteristics of the group. Let's say history, size, their history, their size, and composition, uh, and structure. What's the background information about the group? And draw attention to any available relevant information. If you're studying a community, briefly describe some of the main characteristics such as size of the community, social profile, issues relevant to the central theme of your study. That's mostly applicable to the social sciences again. Sampling under this section of the proposed proposal include the following. Um, the size of the sampling population if known, and from where and how this information will be obtained. The size of the sample you're planning to select and your reasons for choosing this size. Why you are choosing a specific size of a population, what's the number, why you are choosing it, and you need to elaborate it, you need to explain it. An explanation of the sampling design you're planning to use. Is it simple random, is it stratified random sampling, or quota sampling? What site of sampling, what style of sampling are you planning to use? What's the inclusion and exclusion criteria for that? Movement procedure. This section should contain a discussion of your research instrument, whether how you are going to use the instrument for your research instrument for your study, whether you're using an interview, questionnaire, observation forms, or samples. To start with, justify your choice of research tool, highlighting its strength and pointing its weaknesses. Outline the major segment of your research tool and their relevance to the main objectives of the study. Why you have chosen an observational study for that specific work, let's say. Why you are utilizing a questionnaire for your work. What's its important, what's its relevance? Whether you're getting, like at times, let's say you might be studying a molecular, let's say, pattern or frequency of hepatitis C virus in a specific area, and then you will be suggesting that utilize the combined interferon therapy in those patients. But you will be requiring a questionnaire to get a background information, demographic information about the study participants, and that is only be possible with the help of a questionnaire. You are going to ask them questions, you are going to write them down, male, female, what's the age group they are lying in, what's the income they might be having, what's their background information about the disease, they have got there any awareness about the possible transmission of the disease, and how did they contact the disease originally, and have they got any treatment, if yes, for how long, and so many different information related to the subjects of your study. If possible, provide scan of the questionnaire, etc. in the methodology or appendix section. Analysis of the data. In this section, you describe the strategy you intend to use for data analysis. Specify whether the data will be analyzed manually or by the help of a computer. And for computer-based analysis, identify the program where appropriate the statistical procedures you plan to perform on the data. And for quantification study or quantitative studies, you also identify the main variables for cross tabulations. And for quantitative studies, describe how you plan to analyze your interviews or observation notes to draw meanings from what your respondents have said about issues discussed or observational notes made. So how you are going to analyze the data, which type of software or tool are you going to use? For example, most of the time for my research work, I use the GraphPad Prism. For very simpler work, most of the students, they use, let's say, there's different Microsoft tools for their work that depend whether you're going to use SPSS for your work. So you need to uh, provide information about that as well. Ethical issues. All academic institutions are particular about any ethical issues that research might have. To deal with them, all institutions, they have some form of policy on ethics. For example, in our university, we have ethical review committee which analyzes the possible ethical issues with the submitted work, and if your research work it involves some related issues. For example, you are going to contact the participants or patients of a study, for example in microbiological sciences, then how you need to ensure their privacy, you need to ensure how you are going to ensure the privacy of the work, confidentiality, and how you're going to treat them, the ethical treatment. That's very important, and you need to get an approval from the ethical review committee if your research involves ethical issues. It is imperative that in your proposal you identify any ethical issues and describe how you propose to deal with them. Then After all these things, methodology section, then mm, you go to write down your bibliography will be coming that, and appendix is also provided after that. It is in case of quantitative study, yes, attach your research instrument in that, and in the appendix also attach a list of references in the appendix of the proposal. In appendix you can also write down you know, some of the information which are important to your study, but it is beyond, you know, the the scope of the study. It is an additional information, you know. Your main experiments are something else, this is an additional information, so you can keep that in appendix section. You know, some of the experiments during the course of the work, you feel that okay, they are not that much important, they are covered in some following experiments which are much more important, the graphs, the tables of which are important. So the original, the smaller, shorter version of the experiment that you have conducted, you can place them in the appendix section. Work schedule, it has also been provided. You know, you must set yourself dates as you need to complete the research within certain time frame. List the various operational steps you need to undertake and indicate against each the day by day by which you aim to complete that task. Remember to keep some time period towards the end as a cushion in case the research process does not go as smooth as planned. For example, this is an idea for developing a time frame for your study. If your institution requires, or even that's better for you as well. Mm, you can enlist whether you are going to complete your work within weeks or months. That depends on the study, the schedule, the time frame that you have got, and the task which you consider important. For example, you can give yourself a couple of weeks or couple of months, that depends, for research or proposal writing. Along with that, you are going to work on your instrument construction, how you are going to, our instrument, our data, you know, collection, how you are going to collect your information, whether it's an interview, whether it's observational study. You have to develop that questionnaire, interview forms, observational forms, study forms. You need to, so you are going to use them. Then within the next 5, 6, or 7 months, that's the time when you will start collecting the data. You will originally come out, you will go and you will collect the data. You will get the questionnaires done for yourself. The, let's say, consent forms, along with that, or observational study. You will initiate the observations, you will start collecting the data. Then there's the coding. It's not coding for us, and let's say in microbiological field, that is the processing of the data, including, let's say, you have got grab some data from a hospital, and yeah, you have collected the samples, then you bring it back to the research lab, and you're going to process the sample, you're going to work on it. So at times, most of these time period, the data collection and the processing of the sample, they overlap. Along with the collection of sample, they initiate the work, the processing of the sample inside the lab if possible. Then data analysis, you are going to interpret what data have you got and how much important it is. It might take, let's say, a couple of months in for an MPhil work. Then research report, first version, or you can say the first or the rough version of you will start writing your work while you will be analyzing the data. That's important. Or you can start it at some earlier time point to save the time at the end. You know, and then you can start working on your final research report. The rough version will be, and then you can start typing it in by the help of a computer. That's how you conduct a work. Please bear in mind there might be a different sort of this time frame for your study. It might be presented in different forms, but overall concept is the same. Writing a bibliography, a synopsis should contain at the end a list of references of bibliography if required. And you need to acknowledge the scientists who have originally worked. You need to acknowledge their findings by the help of a bibliography. You put down the reference related to their work. We'll, on the coming slide, we'll talk about it. There are several well-established systems for writing a bibliography. Your choice is dependent on the preference of the discipline and the university. You know, university or your discipline might specify you that okay, you have to use the Harvard style of referencing. You need to use the American Medical Association, American Psychology Association, APA style of referencing, the Chicago Manual, Vancouver style. That depends. At time your institute or your university, they will provide you a guidelines writing the bibliography, and you need to follow it strictly in your research synopsis. For example, this is the one we are following at our university. Let's say you have got an article from a journal. These are the notes of it, and this is the style of writing an article from a journal. Let's say this is the surname Macmillan Sally G, and the year of publication 1994. It's written in brackets, bracket close, and then inverted commas open, and you need to write the name of the research article, that is Antebellum Southern Fathers and the Health Care of Children, then full stop, inverted comma closed, and then you need to name the write the name of the journal, that is Journal of Southern History, and the volume is 60 comma number 3, page number 5, page range is 513 to 32. And this is the note form when you write down in the original text or introduction, or that is methodology. You just write down the number 1, 2, 3, 4, and then that number is followed by that. Okay, at number 3, this is the reference that I have placed. Okay, then article from a newspaper. Let's say this is again who has authored that article, note that article, and then the year of publication, and then the name of the article, and then the exactly New Market Watch, New York Times is the name of that newspaper, and is section 3, April 23 it is published, and it is then another number is 2000, that April 23 2000 is the exact day that article is published in section 3. You need to provide the information of the day as well in an article of a newspaper. Dissertation or scientific thesis, Simply Patama is the name of, let's say, the PhD thesis or whatsoever dissertation that have been submitted in the year is 2004, and the name of the thesis is the contribution of economic institution factors to currency crisis, additional evidence from Asia, Europe, and the Western Hemisphere. And okay, this inverted comma closed, you need to identify this is a PhD dissertation which is submitted in University of South Carolina, and in ProQuest digital dissertation database online. It is available from this link, and then publication number access time is August 8 2007. So this is the way when you access, when you have yourself accessed it, to have opened it utilizing that digital format. Right now, if you are going to get the dissertation or thesis from a university, that's a good idea as well, but these are available online, so it is better to access them the online system. Okay, and these are different web page format, how you are going to write down the article or your information that you have collected from a web page and different sources. This is the format that you will be following it. Length of a synopsis. It will be difficult to define an overall length for a synopsis for MSc, MPhil, PhD research work in such varied fields of study. Whereas a research synopsis should be concise as far as possible, and it should be avoiding repetition. It should provide the sufficient details on the various aspects mentioned above to show that the research involved has been well understood. It has been excellently planned, and it is in an acceptable academic merit. And the total length of synopsis may run from 1500 to a few thousand words. That depend again on your institutional requirements, how long, what is the length of synopsis they suggest to have for you. Thank you so much for listening to this presentation.